Hello guys, how are you? It's teacher Yolanda here and welcome to our session 21. Today we're going to continue checking our conditionals. So for this session we're going to need our English notebook and our Amaze book. Please go and get them. So today we will be working with second conditional. Second conditional is used for unreal situations all the time. Remember that all the conditionals are a mixture of two sentences. In this case, the sentences are if linked with a sentence in simple past and after the comma a sentence with word. Remember, we can invert the order. We can start with a sentence with word, if in the center, and then a sentence in past. Something that you have to remember is that the condition that goes with if always takes a verb in past after that. And the unreal consequence always goes with word. You cannot add the condition with word. It has to be always with simple past. For that, we're going to review our formulae. In this case, we have a revision. Remember, revision is repaso. We're going to have a revision of simple past formulae. In affirmative, we will need a subject plus a verb in past, and then our complement. The negative form would be our subject, didn't, and the stem form of the verb, and our complement. Why the stem form of the verb? Remember, the stem form of the verb is what we will call the normal verb. Why? Because in this case, the only time that we're going to use the verb in past is only in affirmative. Remember that simple past is not simple at all. Simple present and simple past have formulae which are a little bit complicated because they change a lot from the affirmative to the negative and interrogative. In this case, we have to pay attention because didn't is a past of do and does. So remember, if you know the formulae of simple present, you automatically know the formulae of simple past. So affirmative, verb in past, negative, didn't, and the normal verb. Remember, the normal verb is grammatically correct, called the stem form of the verb, which is la forma tallo del verbo. And our complement. In interrogative form, we're going to start with the auxiliary did, our subject, and then the stem form of the verb and a complement. Remember, there is an exception. This formulae applies to all the verbs, all of them, except the verb to be. Am, is, and are. Remember, am, is, and are is a difficult and different verb because itself has the option to turn itself into affirmative, negative, and interrogative without the usage of any kind of auxiliary. So we're going to check it in a few moments, don't worry. Now let's check the revision of woulds formula. That one is simple. It's would or would not. Remember, the contraction of that is wouldn't, and the stem form of the verb. A short reminder that we should have is that would means the ending iría of all of the verbs in Spanish. So if we say comprar, compraría, jugar, jugaría, ir, iría, traer, traería, etc. That's the meaning of would. Would is the ending ría in Spanish verbs conjugations. Let's start by checking some of the examples. In here it says, if I had a car, I wouldn't use the subway. If we embed the order of the sentence, it would be, I wouldn't use the subway if I had a car. Again, pay attention. Here, when we have the if clause at the beginning, we have the comma in the center, dividing sentence from sentence. But here, as we have the if in the center, we don't need the comma anymore. So, what's the meaning of this? In this case, we have to start paying attention to the grammar structure, especially the one of the past, because past is a little bit different from past simple in Spanish. Maybe you didn't realize it, but Spanish conjugations are extremely difficult to learn. They change a lot. They change a lot from the subject. They change a lot from the different tenses. But English, believe it or not, is a little bit easier because English makes chunks of verb conjugations in only one. One of those that has lots of conjugations in just one tense is simple past. So, if we were to translate this sentence, it says I would use the subway if I had a car. It would be yo no usaría el metro. So here we have ría. What is that? In Spanish is postpretérito. Can you see? Next, if I had a car. In this case, this is not si yo tuve un auto. That's not a correct translation. It is si yo tuviera o si yo tuviese un carro. That in Spanish is what we will call pretérito imperfecto del subjuntivo. So, as you can see, this is not simple past. It's pretérito imperfecto del subjuntivo. That means the endings era y ese. For example, ir would be fuera, fuese. Jugar. Si yo jugara, si yo jugase. And for example, sing. Si yo cantara, si yo cantase. These two conjugations in Spanish have no difference between them whatsoever. They are synonyms. So the correct translation would be any of those. So now we're learning. Simple past in English has two conjugations of Spanish in it. It will be pasado simple, and it could also be pretérito imperfecto del subjuntivo. And how are you going to realize which is the correct translation? Easy. These things they are only used for unreal situations. This makes an emphasis on how unreal the situation is. Remember, second conditional, it's only used for unreal situations. So, how can we make sure that this is unreal? Because if I had a car, I wouldn't use the subway. This means I don't have a car and I use the subway. Okay? Here we're going to start facing, as I told you, some particularities when it comes to simple past. Here we're going to have a grammatical exception. Pay attention. This grammatical exception is only used for unreal situations. Only for unreal situations. When you're talking about things that are unreal, you say I wear, he wear, she wear, it wear. I know that you are used to the verb to be, meaning I was, you were, he was, she was, it was, we were, they were. But when we're talking about unreal situations, the verb to be is were for all of the subjects. Negative, weren't. What's the meaning of verb to be in these situations? Remember that verb to be has two meanings, ser or estar. For example, I was at school. I was very happy. So that means yo estaba en la escuela, yo estaba feliz. But also you can say, I was a boy when I was in kindergarten. Now I am a teenager. Yo era un niño cuando estaba en el kinder, pero ahora yo soy un adolescente. So, what is the meaning of this when we talk about unreal situations? Si yo fuera, si yo fuese, or the other meaning of verb to be, si yo estuviera, or si yo estuviese. That's the meaning of were in this situation. Pay attention, it's only for real situations, so please don't start writing sentences in past continuous with were, like he were running. No, it's he was running. We use it only for real situations. Let's pay attention to an example here. It says, if Miss Olivia were our teacher, we would be in 6th A. Let's invite the author of the sentence. We would be in 6th A if she were our teacher. So, this were is not si ella fue o si ella estuvo nuestra maestra. That's not the correct translation of it. The correct translation would be si ella fuese o si ella fuera nuestra maestra. For this case, the Spanish teacher of 6A and 6B both are Olivia, so maybe we could say we would be in 6A or 6B if Miss Olivia were our teacher, or any of the teacher Olivias were our teachers. Okay, so again, if she were, it's making an emphasis on how unreal it is. You are not in 6A, you are in 6C. And Miss Olivia is not your Spanish teacher, it's teacher Gabby. As second conditional is used for real situations, we can also use second conditional to give advice. You may say, how? If we're giving advice, it's because we want them to do something. Well, here's an example. If I were you, I wouldn't go out. It is still an unreal situation because I am not you. So what is the unreal part of this sentence? If I were you. You are yourself. You are not the other person. So you say, if I were you, I wouldn't go out. Inverting the order, I wouldn't go out if I were you. Meaning, si yo fuera tú, no saldría. Yes, especially during quarantine. Yes. We could also make some interrogative samples. Let's read this one. What will you do if you won the lottery? Again, you're asking about unreal situations. Pay attention. Now what you don't know is the consequence. So we start asking about the would clause because the would is the consequence that we don't know. That's why we say, what would you do if you won the lottery? I would buy a mansion. Again, an unreal situation. You haven't won the lottery. And you don't have money for a mansion, of course. But relax, kids. There were so many sad faces in the previous slides, but it is no bad news. We can also use second conditional to thank someone, making an emphasis in how bad things would be if it weren't for them. Pay attention, if it weren't for them. Si no fuera por ellos. Here we got an example. It says, if you weren't my friend, I would be lonely. This is an unreal situation. Why is it unreal? Because this means that you are my friend and I am not lonely. So can you see? Now this is a nice situation. You're telling your friend, si tú no fueras o si tú no fueses mi amigo, estaría muy solo. Yes, but that's untrue. You're telling that to your friend, so that means that you've got a friend and you're not lonely. Here we have a comparative chart of conditionals. We have been reviewing conditionals during these last classes, so I just wanted to make like a wrap up of this. Here we have a number of conditional, the usage, and the tenses that make both clauses. Clauses are the sentences, okay? So zero conditional, it's used for always, true consequences, or scientific facts. The formula is if, simple present, and simple present. Starting from here, from the first conditional and up the way to the third, the formula is basically the same. The only thing that you're going to do is transform into past and get further into the past tenses. So, first conditional is for very probable consequences. My formula is if plus a sentence in simple present plus a sentence with will or want. Second conditional, as we just saw, is for real situations. Pay attention. Here is simple present, here it's simple past. Here is will and want. What's the past of will and want? Would and wouldn't. Can you see? So if you know this formula, the only thing that you have to do is transform it to the past. And guess what, guys? There is a third conditional, and that you will see in high school. But you could start guessing the formula. Present, past. Here, what would you need? The past of the past. What's the past of the past? Past perfect. Here you have will. What's the past of will? Would. And here you need the past of would. What is the past of would? Would, have, and above in past participle. But don't worry, this you will see in junior high. So far, let's memorize this. Always true consequences or scientific facts, very probable consequences, and real situations. Simple present plus simple present. Then simple present plus will and won't. Transform it to the past and it's simple past and would or wouldn't. So now in this page at our maze book, we're going to be checking our second conditional. Here it says an example. If they had a dog, they would call it Stinky. Now let's look at this boy. He's drumming. If I won the lottery, I would spend all the money on myself. If you dance salsa, we would go to the party. None of these sentences are true. That's why they're done in second conditional. In the first exercise, it says, look and write. Let's pay attention to the first one because the first one is the example. Look at this. We have Scotland. Don't worry about the flags. All of the places are already written there. So, if my brother, we have a go. But as we know, the first clause needs a past. So, if my brother went to Scotland, he would play the bagpipes. If we see that, here's the bagpipes. What are the bagpipes? They're una gaita. Okay? So, what you have to do is pay attention to the illustrations. Here the answers may vary, but this part has to be exactly the same for everybody. Okay? Remember, you need the verb in past. Okay? So please do it and we'll check it later in our class. Now, in this page, we continue with second conditional. The example says, if I were you, I wouldn't speak so loud. Again, it is second conditional because the first clause is real. If I were you. So what are we doing now? Now in this page, we have to give advice, but using second conditional. Let's pay attention to the examples that are here. It says, I'll leave the window open. If I were you, I would close it. Can you see? So they're in the middle of summer or spring and there are lots of mosquitoes outside. So that's why she's recommending to close it. So if I were you, I would close it. Let's check these. If I were you, I would call your mum. If I were you, I wouldn't eat junk food. So you're going to pay attention to the illustrations and you're going to give advice. Yes? Let's look at the example. The example is number 1. It says, if I were you, I would take an umbrella. Again, the answers may vary. So all of them would have to start with, if I were you. Look at this thing and, well, look at these illustrations and try to think what's the best piece of advice that you could give them. Okay? Last but not least, remember to do all the exercises in our PDF file that we're going to do later and check, and also these exercises over here of the book. And I'll see you in a few minutes, okay? Bye!